teaching for the first time with us, and then we'll go through and we'll have we'll give about 10 minutes to first Renee, if she hops on. If not, we'll start with Jeremy, Mike, and Sherry and sharing their experiences. And again, this is very interactive, so we'll hopefully have more of a natural transition, but if not, we'll just help with navigating that as you each share your experiences, and then open it up to anybody else as well. I know we have some returning faculty on here as well that are invited to share as well. So we'll go ahead and start off with Jacob.
Yes, thank you, Cece. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. So last year was the first time I taught at the Institute. I taught 3 courses: industry trends, strategic planning, and membership recruitment and retention. And I'll just begin by saying it was a lot of fun, a very positive experience. Really, really enjoyed it myself. Taking a step back, though, I was a participant in the program, starting in Villanova, and which is in, I believe, the summer, Northeast Institute. And then I finished in Tucson. So I kind of hopped sites a little bit to get a different experience of what to take away from different sites. But I can tell you that each site is very different. I'm sure you've heard already, the Villanova site has a lot more associations than some of the other sites, but I definitely enjoyed being a student, but also a faculty member last year. So I finished my course in 2016, and my initial goal was to prepare for the CE exam. I just didn't realize what a great community it ended up being. I just became very close with a lot of participants and keep in touch with them. So what I wish I had known before going into the program for the first time faculty, I guess I didn't anticipate how much prep it would really take for each course. I did 3 courses last year, and it definitely took a good chunk of time before, even arriving on site, but also before, each day, making sure I have all the slides in order, that I'm ready, and so on. But I do wish I had sit on another person's class to kind of get a feel for some of the students in my courses. Each year is different, each group is different. The 3 courses I taught were the core courses. So those folks stay together throughout the 4 years, and they end up staying in the program. But I wish I kind of, arrived early and participated as a first-time faculty to kind of see what the energy is like in the class, and what the engagement is like, and so on. But I definitely, I just want to underline, it took me much more time than anticipated to prepare. Some recommendations I have for new faculty is to review all the logistical information in advance. I think Cece and the team do a phenomenal job putting everything together, but there is a lot of information out there, so you kind of want to make sure that you spend some time to review everything, highlight what's important, especially relevant for you and your class, and so on. Plan in advance, go to each session location in advance. So what I did was I arrived at each classroom to kind of get a feel of what the room is set up like, where I'll be standing, how to engage with each student, and so on. I also like to review the list of participants in advance. It's important for me to understand where the folks are coming from. Are they coming from chambers? Are they association staffers? So that I can kind of adjust the content accordingly. I used to work for a chamber, for the chamber, Branson, Missouri Chamber of Commerce. I then spent the bulk of my career in associations. So I kind of have, relevant information for both, but definitely heavily skewed on the association side. So having this understanding of who's in the room will help you prepare and tailor your content. I also like to review the websites for each organization to kind of get a better sense of, are they a large staff organization where each staff member is very specialized, or are they very small where one person wears a lot of different hats? So you kind of get a better sense of who's in the room by doing some research in advance. It's also kind of important to understand that some of these folks are very junior, some of them are very experienced. So it's useful to kind of engage some of the more seasoned folks in the room so that they feel like they are giving back as well, and also you kind of have some support as you deliver the content. Something I didn't do that I wish I had done was connect with other faculty more on one-on-one basis. I participated in different calls like this one, but what I didn't do was reach out to somebody in advance and say, hey, let's get coffee, let's have breakfast, tell me what you experienced. And I feel like those conversations one-on-one with other folks who are on faculty can uncover some deeper thoughts that perhaps we are not mentioning in these calls. So build a network with fellow faculty members as well as the students, participants in these courses who are very seasoned. You'll likely see them in the future. And also spend time with the students. So there's all these opportunities to have breakfast together, to have lunch together, to sit down and get to know others one-on-one basis that I think is very helpful as you develop your content, but also for future purposes as you grow in the program and move forward within the chamber. I think finally, I would like to highlight that I just had a lot of fun. So I think it's kind of a bit of a cliche that I heard from other faculty, but it really is a tremendous experience. And I took away myself quite a bit from being able to prepare and kind of look back at my experience and spend some time thinking about what are some best practices in our industry to give back to the community at the same time as I'm growing myself. I guess just final thought that came to mind was a mistake that I did as I was getting ready and delivered my courses. So out of the 3 courses, the first one was for the 4th year. The second one I delivered was for the 3rd year, and the 3rd one was for the 1st year. And I kind of prepared, in that order as well. And what I didn't anticipate is that the classes were much bigger for the 1st year. Of course, I looked at the rosters. It occurred to me that it's going to be much more difficult to manage those bigger groups. So I think a mistake I made, preparing was not anticipating that I cannot spend 30 minutes, going around the room, asking each person to give me their, first name and last name, where they're from. It took me a long time. So the smaller groups that I had were, I think, 15 participants. So very manageable, very easily to kind of navigate. The 1st year class was, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe even more. So it kind of made it more challenging for me to, do the same thing I did for the other courses. But a recommendation that I picked up from my evaluations was in the future, when you have a big group like that and you're trying to get some feedback in advance, other instructors do surveys that I think, are a good way to kind of gauge a sense of what the people are expecting from the course, but also get a better sense of people's backgrounds and, what they're interested in and so on, to give you the opportunity to tailor your content, at the same time making sure that you're utilizing the time to, most efficiently, I guess. So those are the tips I have, and I look forward to being engaged in the future. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, and thank you, Jacob. And don't let him deceive you. He did an amazing job. Great feedback from attendees, and I would echo what you shared of, especially the introductions. We really encourage that, because the attendees will have the opportunity to introduce themselves to each other at the start of the week, to really use class time for content. So to do as little introduction or no introductions, but rather find ways perhaps to integrate kind of those into the content of the class. But yeah, I'll open it up for any questions that especially our new faculty coming in have, or if anybody has any questions for Jacob before we move on. All
Great
right,
job,
seeing none. Yeah, you can
Good
always
job.
come back. We'll always come back to pick your brain. So Jeremy, we'll turn it over to you to share some of your experiences and hot tips and tricks.
There we go. Get it right. So I will not be in Tucson, but I will be at other sites this year. I didn't tell you, I've kind of lost track of what the classes that I teach. This is my Sherry 9th or 10th year as a faculty member. It's my 19th year involved with Institute as a whole. So Jacob, I went through the course, then I was a class advisor, then I was a board of regent, then I was a faculty member, then I was a board of trustee, and the list goes. I've chaired a couple of task force and curriculum committee, et cetera, et cetera. So they can't seem to shake rid of me for some reason. But Karen, I teach the strategic planning class, or have in the past. So I know the folks in Tucson will be delighted to hear from you. I've taught membership and sponsorship. I teach the ever sexy class on governance. So everybody loves that class. But I teach the delivering value class, the strong chambers for the future class. The list goes on and on. So Jacob, much like you, I worked for a chamber, ran a local chamber, and then worked for a state association. and now I'm back in higher ed, where I still work with chambers and associations across the state of Alabama. Really, for I guess, just a few tips to me. Most of the students will have a name tag or a tent card that lists, their name and their organization. That helps. I really, prior to the class, utilize those rosters, picking up on what CC and Jacob shared earlier, and do my own research ahead of time to see, because you're provided with not only their name, but their organization, their contact information. I have reached out to classes prior to save on that classroom management time to get their I guess, to gauge their interest, and also topics or any areas of concern they may have, because the course curriculum, the course descriptions and topics are listed on the Institute website. So please, refer back to those, and that's how I kind of tee up my class roster solicitation or inquiry prior to class. Every class is different, as you know that. You're all professionals and have been in front of folks, and sometimes they're loud, and sometimes they're quiet, and sometimes they ask questions, and sometimes they don't, and sometimes you chase squirrels. And so just trying to manage that, but make the most use of the time. I do a lot of group interaction work because I feel like it's more applicable and hands-on. And also lets them apply real world scenarios. So most of the time they're using a specific example or sample that's in their chamber or their association. And so I try to use that effectively across the cadre, really focusing on the different topics that I have, but also keeping in mind that you are approaching some folks that are brand new to the profession and some folks that are seasoned in the profession. So not making them too difficult, but also trying to make it not too elementary. And then also I strategize in advance to divide my teams up, because the class roster is provided to me. So rather than let them number off or pair up or go with their friends or someone they already know, I don't know whether they know each other or not. And so I've already predetermined the groups, and I'll say, okay, that's how I have used group sizes and activities that way. A lot of sites do the consultation where faculty members are available. I know Jacob mentioned connecting with the faculty member. Certainly, if it is a very specific question or is beginning to monopolize class time and taking away from other content that needs to be covered during the class, I'll refer a student to a consultation or offer, as Jacob said, to meet with them one-on-one outside of class. And certainly thank them for sharing their concern, and it may be a concern of others, but if we don't have time to specifically address the particular question in class, then that's also a way to do that. It is a lot of preparation, as Jacob mentioned earlier, especially when you teach multiple classes on multiple topics. But that shows the professionalism of the program as a whole. And I really have found that class engagement and class participation is what drives the bulk of the conversation and often helps you achieve the goals and objectives of each course. As a former chair of the curriculum committee, please pay attention to those. I think that is crucial, and I think CC would agree with that. There are goals and objectives. Your teaching style and how you deliver it, completely up to you. But try to make sure that you cover those, because the curriculum committee has done yeoman's work every year to make sure those goals and objectives are current and also on trend and on topic with kind of experiences in the industry now. You survey the room. Each room is different and each class size is different, and sometimes that can present a challenge. I can say this because CC, I am oftentimes the problem child with technology connection, or at least last year that was the case at the multiple sites I taught at. And so just be prepared. Certainly we made it work, but every site connection is different. Every room connection is different, and every technology piece of equipment is different. So I will not be bringing my Surface this year. That seemed to be the problem child last year. So you'll be glad to know that, CC. But just be mindful of that as well, and always have a backup. And so that's what I taught half the class. We just made do. The technology wouldn't work, and so we forged ahead. So you'll have a great experience, or at least I have. CC, anything I didn't cover briefly? I know there's other topics that the other presenters, Sherry and Mike, are going to cover, but
Yeah, I mean, that's great. Anything you have, as far as, kind of like breaking, I know you talked a little bit about breaking up friend groups and kind of, mixing it
Yeah.
up. Just any other feedback you have. I know you've taught a plethora of classes, of, kind of how you've managed if you have a loud student, or how you do if you have squirrels, how do you kind of bring it in and rein it in, if you don't mind sharing just what you've experienced and what you've done in those cases.
So I begin every class by asking just for kind of input if I don't do it in advance, because rosters do change, not as much core, but sometimes an elective. And so I don't want to make sure anybody's left out. And so I always, if I send the email prior to class, asking them what they'd like to see, obviously they don't have a crystal ball and they haven't seen my presentation, although it's uploaded and can look at it in advance, but don't know what I'm going to cover and the specifics and the details I'm going to give. And so I start every class by asking them, what would you like to achieve? And that way, at the end of the class, I go back through and make sure that I have covered every single, at least mentioned it or given some tip or trick or a referral of what to look at, or another class to take. Or a resource, or who you should talk to. For example, they got a membership question. I'm going to say, I hope I covered it, but you need to find Sherry. Or if I've got a finance question, I haven't covered that because I'm a liberal arts major, you need to find Mike. So that's some of the things that I've done. Now, a quiet class, I ask questions. And I often say, look, I'm an only child. Silence does not bother me. And so it will break the ice a lot of times, and we'll get some discussion going. But I think also if you pose questions in the class, it begins to open up. And then, yes, the squirrel chasing is there, certainly with the louder students or the students that tend to dominate or have a lot of questions. And so it's a delicate balance. But certainly not rude in any way, certainly validating their concerns and their questions, but also referring them offline, giving them the resources to follow outside of class, and also reminding them that we have a finite amount of time together. And that's what the social activities, the networking opportunities, the core, the extracurricular classes, the bonus sessions, those kinds of things, that's what that's for.
Awesome.
Hey,
Well, I will.
Jeremy, this is Stephanie. I have a question for you.
Yes, ma'am.
So for an elective, that's only 2 hours,
Right.
would you recommend group activities, or if not, is just asking questions enough to engage the class? It's 35 people, so.
Yeah, I would think you've probably got enough time. You only have time to do one group exercise as a whole. Depends on the complexity of the group exercise in the class you're teaching. I mean, I've had some where I'm asking them to develop mission statements, in strategic planning, or come up with goals, and realizing the difference between goals and objectives. Those kinds of things sometimes take a little more time. But then also, just brainstorming some issues and doing some report outs can also be achieved. I tend to include way more information in my slide deck than is necessary. And it just is what it is. But I tell them because I want that slide deck to be a resource for them in the future. So we may not cover everything in my slide deck. And some of my slides may be wordy, but it's also so they don't have to feverishly take notes while we're having the discussion. And feverishly try to, capture a thought in class. I've captured it in the slide deck prior. So sometimes my slide decks are way, way too long and way, way too wordy. But that's what I tell the class is that, hey, this is meant to be a resource for you for the future. And so there's a lot of explanatory details, on there. And certainly I'm not reading it to them, but that kind of helps a little bit. Does that answer your question, Stephanie?
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, you'll do great. I'm excited. I know you said it's your first time. You'll hit it out of the park. I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions?
Nope.
Awesome. Well, with that said, we'll go ahead. Mike, if you'd like, we'll give you the mic.
Okay, hear me okay? Hey, thank you, Jeremy. Jeremy, you covered a lot. Jeremy, I wanted to ask you a question, if I could put you on. I think you really, you're not going to go wrong, but I think you also need to be true to your own teaching style, because every topic and every teacher has a different presentation style. I teach the finance classes. Oftentimes, CC likes to put me next door to the people who are making a lot of noise and jumping up and down. people aren't going to do that when you're looking at financial numbers. Either that, they're in trouble. So I think you got to figure that out. But Jeremy, I think the most important thing in the room is engagement. I don't want to repeat things because we're all have, but different classes learn different ways to bring people in, and such, and the size of the room and everything. So I use, Jamie, like a Socratic method. I don't wait for people to ask me questions. I throw them out there. I don't tend to call on a person until I know. I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I like to put a lot of open-ended questions out there and bring people into the conversation. The best part of IOM is cohort training. It's a little less in the electives because not everybody will know everybody else in the class, but they get there pretty quick. But especially the core courses, you play off of them, getting a dialogue going back and forth, and such. And whether you have, breakout sessions, group exercise, it really depends on the topic you're teaching, but it gets back to the time management. Because these classes are interactive, you can get off time real quick. I teach over 100 classes. I do a lot of classes. I teach all over the place. I carry around a little timer that's nobody can see it. I put it on the floor. I put it someplace so nobody can think like I'm looking at my watch and all that. And I have like certain little benchmark times, especially the longer classes where you want to be at certain points, and know that no two classes are alike. I've done it at CC sometimes when there's been 3 or first year classes, teaching them back to back to back, and each one has a different flavor, and that is really good. I can't tell you enough about reading through the rosters real quick, just to see the names, but who the organizations are coming from. I really like Winter. Each site is different, but I think Winter is like a really diverse site because of the way it's so separated from the other sites, right? CC, I think you get a real mix of everything.
Yeah, I think it might have been said before, but Winter is our site that has the most fast trackers. And what that is people, for those not familiar, is people that don't go to one site for the full 4-year experience, but people that choose, different sites throughout. So Winter, I think, has about 30% are fast trackers. It's our highest site. So that
because of that, you
classroom
get
camaraderie might look different.
the rooms are really like a mixed salad. You get all kinds of people in different parts of the country, and it's just great. So I really like that a lot. I can't encourage enough to keep your eyes open. I want to get through my materials, Jeremy, like you, but I do have things there that are for people to take back and encourage. I think that can take you sideways. And Jeremy, there's so many subjects we can talk about, and I know other people are going to talk, but Cece, I think we should talk a little bit about managing, it's not disruption, but some people like to talk a lot and some people don't.
Yeah,
and if you get
please
one
share.
person
Please share.
eating up the room, I think you can get used, you can I like when students and I can engage, and if you have one that's real talkative, you can sort of get tunnel vision in on that. And so I think you need to try to, I call it, spread the wealth a little bit and such. And I tend to do something, I don't want people to think I'm disingenuous, but a lot of times I'll say, I'm from DC, so I'll do the DC talk. That's really interesting is saying like a way like I don't want to talk about that or something, but I'll say it's really interesting. What do you guys think or something, or someone will bring up. I'll try to, if it's always coming through a single source, and try to spread the wealth around the room that way and such. Cece, I was just looking over some of the topics you've written down. I wanted to make sure that we're covering all that. I think the classroom size is interesting. It varies a lot, and it varies from year to year, as we saw coming out of the pandemic and things. There were catch-up classes. There were all kinds of things. You would have a class with 10 in it, and then you would have a class with like 55 in it, and such. And I think you really need to adapt your teaching method. I don't know if anybody else agrees to that. A lot of times speakers want to just cover certain things in a certain way. I feel like each classroom should be an open book, I mean, an open audition, so to speak, that each one could take on a different life and such. And you can get a quick feel for that with the classes. I think also, Jeremy, would you agree with this? I think it's good to get some engagement at the front end of the class like you're doing. There's a lot of different tricks. And I think CC set it up for, I stay away from the standard ones, no introductions, none of those kind of things. But you can usually find something in your presentation that's core to what you're talking about, but it starts out at a more basic level, and you start to get a feel for where people are in the class and such. And then the other thing is I like to always talk about examples and topics that might be not just like if you go to Southeast, which is very chamber related, I have no problem bringing in like corporate and association topics and things. Try to get them to, because you can learn from problem solving, in other areas, and to think about that. The last thing I wanted to say, which I think we all share, CC, and which makes this program well, and I've taught at some universities where you're teaching alongside tenured faculty, they want to know that we're active in our fields, right? Does everybody agree with that? And to let them know that, oh yeah, I'm out there. I feel your pain. I've been in that situation. It's been uncomfortable. This is where I made mistakes. All that kind of stuff, and try to, they really, because people want to know that, we all do this for a living and we're all active. I think it's one of the best parts, CC, of the faculty, that we have people who are out there in the trenches, so to speak, doing these kind of things. The last thing is, and CC, I'm going to have you talk about this. I don't want to talk about it, but I've been very fortunate in my teaching career where I haven't gotten sideways by accident in the room, but I am more sensitive to the subject, that when I'm using examples and things, and try not to get in an area that could be, or use wording, and definitely stay away from like bad words and things. Sometimes you use a word to catch people's attention or something. I find myself softening all that a little bit. And I've seen people, by accident, didn't mean to, and they get there and it can really throw you off your game if something happens. So just really think about it. The trick I use is I use my experiences, but I also take CC, what do you call it when you artistic whatever you call that?
Artistic liberty.
License. And I will mold any experience I want to talk about to fit that situation. I don't usually throw out names of clients or organizations or people. I'll change it and I'll say, hey, this is a situation that sort of melds in a couple of pieces. I let people know I don't want to lie or anything, but I'll make up examples that I feel, because I have a great example, but people might not want to hear that it came from XYZ organization that they don't believe in or something, and all they hear is the organization's name. You know what I mean? So, CC, could you comment on that? And that's where I wanted to end. It's just to make sure you're really comfortable.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure I'm addressing correctly. So I think there's two components of what you're saying that that I'd love to touch on. One is, please be sure to use professional language. For some reason, that is something in the last couple of years that while we are comfortable with one another and in the classroom, it is a professional organization and professional development. So please just be conscious to use professional language is one component I'd love to touch on. And then the second, Mike can redirect me if I'm not in the right direction, but just be sure to be respectful of, your past experiences, or, examples you may share may not shed the best light on an organization or a person. Just be cognizant that what you're doing is remaining confidential or anonymous, and, sharing those experiences, but in a way that is, I guess, professional, respectful, overall, just, be cognizant of how you're sharing information and not throwing an organization under the bus, but still you can say, this is an example, if you're going through, for example, strategic plans of, here's some examples of why you might want to do something a little bit different. That's a little different than, oh, this CEO, this, that, the other. Just if Mike, I don't know if that's the direction you're going in.
Yeah, it's a little bit of that, and using, this would not get you in trouble, but this is an over-exaggeration to say, oh, that's a storm brewing. We don't want to think anybody thinks like I am climate or something, or environmental, or, you know what I mean? So just think through your examples, that you might have used. I've been just more hearing some stories from other faculty members who, oh, I brought up this example. I didn't think people were going to jump, just caught me off guard or something. So I'm always trying to, I don't want to ever soft sell something, but I want to be thoughtful. You see what I'm getting at? CC, you just want
Yeah.
to be out there, and you could pick a subject and be pretty benign and say, oh, you really don't love animals? What's wrong with you? Or something, type
Yeah.
of thing. So
Yeah. Well, excellent. Well, any questions for Mike? And I love, Mike, what you brought up of the presentation styles are different, right? Well, there's some things that translate across the board. There are some things that be true to who you are. You were selected to participate as faculty for a reason because you bring different skill sets, and, something that is inauthentic to you will show. If it's not, something that is part of who you are, it will show in the classroom. So just find ways to integrate some of those practices in a way that, again, is true to who you are.
Yep. And then my favorite thing, I'll stop with this one, is I think it shows that sometimes I'll say to people, you know what, I would like to talk to you about that offline. It'll take too much time. I want to look into that. Jeremy, you refer to that. I'd like to do that. But I'll be even more blunt, and I'll just say, hey, that's not a soup question. That's a little bit deep. Why don't we talk between sessions or sign up for, something? And then I'll just say we have to move on, and there to, you can always email me or something.
And Mike, you brought up something that reminded me of, even considering the time of day that you're teaching is important. Well, it doesn't necessarily have the biggest impact, thinking of, are you coming in right after lunch? That will have a play.
Exactly.
Are you the first one of the day? That will impact how the class is, whether they're just waking up at the very last class of the day. So just looking at where your class is placed within the grid, which is on that faculty resource page. Excellent. So any questions for Mike? I'll open that up. And if not, you can definitely,
Thanks.
I would say, oh yeah.
Sorry, it's Stephanie
No,
again.
yeah.
One of the questions I've asked some of the previous faculty is how they handle the evaluations. And I'm really curious to see how Mike and Jeremy, you guys, since you do have different teaching styles, like I've heard everything from I don't even look at them to I was so upset about one that I never taught again. So I just love to hear your advice about handling evaluations.
Sure, it's a great question.
Do you guys need me to leave? I can leave for this discussion.
No. You
I'm just kidding. I know it runs
Jeremy,
the gamut.
do you want to go first? You want me to take a quick shot? I
Go
mean,
ahead.
that's personal.
CC knows my stance on them, so go ahead. I'll share. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Mike.
I have to remind myself I'm my worst enemy when it comes to evaluations, because you don't look at all the fives, or most of everybody do. You get that one comment, and if you have 35 people in the room and 34 of them are happy, don't overstress on the one. We all deal with boards and things. I always say to people, the best board votes are the ones that aren't 18-0, that you have, and you have a pretty diverse group. So I look at it. I think the evaluations are a big help. The issue with the evaluations now, CC, is in the old paper way was horrible for the environment, but good for getting 100% representation. Let people out of the room. You don't get as many evaluations in. So when you look through them, just, I don't know. What do you do, Jeremy? Do you go for the bottle or a cup of coffee? I don't know. Oh, you dropped the computer in that one.
Both, no. Yeah, and it is. I use them because they're also effective for the curriculum committee, that says, hey, have you thought about including this? Or I think this course could be beneficial if you include this topic. And yeah, I try not to take them personal. I had a zinger this year that was just not constructive at all. And turns out, several others had zingers too. And so you're right. I don't take it personally. It does stick with you because I'll be honest with you. A lot of times I don't read my fives. I read the 2 or the 1 if you get one of those. And I'm lucky that as most of the faculty are, as a whole. But I do try to use it to be constructive and to say, okay, why didn't that person connect on that particular topic, and how can I strengthen the presentation in the future to make sure that person connects? What did I not say? What did I not do? How did they not? But at the end of the day, like you said, if the majority of them are well, I don't stress over it. But that's a great question,
No, I
Steph.
take
Man,
a
it
quick
is.
look.
I do always look
every
at
once in
them.
a while you'll
Yeah.
pick up on an obvious one that's not technical. Like,
Yeah.
CC, with the first classes we got back were really big, and I tend to not like a lavalier mic, and I try to project. But then I had a couple comments where people said a mic's voice was trailing off. From then on, I just grabbed the lavalier mic. There's some things, or you'll learn about something. That's just like, oh, I fell into a little bad habit or something. My voice went down or something. So
Yeah.
you take a look at, most of them are really helpful.
Yeah, to that I would say too, take it with a grain of salt. Definitely. And I do know faculty, some that say I don't read it because people can be very critical and while we ask that it be, professional and just helpful feedback, sometimes people are not kind and they don't think about what it is to be on the other side of presenting. So definitely, one, take it with a grain of salt. And I know, that's easier said than done, right? When somebody gives me a piece of feedback, I'm like, it's fine, I'm fine. And then the second part about Mike, the response rate. So that is one reason why we've asked that you include that last slide be the QR code for the evaluations, because we are looking at how can we get more responses. We did see with paper, we got more quantity, but the quality was much lower, where before it sounds like, from my understanding, it was paper, evaluations, and you could not leave the classroom until it was complete. And so people would just write, nothing helpful, right? They would complete it, but it wasn't quality. So we're trying to merge those two of how do we build in a couple minutes at the end for that feedback and give them time, because going through as an attendee recently, I can definitely tell you it's dense. You're going from class to class, you have a couple minutes between. So it's a lot. So if you can build in just a couple minutes at the end with that course evaluation slide up and give them the chance to give thoughtful feedback, it is more fresh at that time and might be better feedback. And then when you get the feedback itself, take it with a grain of salt, but appreciate some of the comments, but try not to let it get to you and make you think too hard on it, because it is just one person's feedback.
Cece, that's a great idea. I haven't done that. I haven't put my final slide be the evaluation reminder. I verbally say it, but I'm going to do that.
So, and we've started that actually. So for the faculty teaching at Winter, we provide you the slide, and we ask that be the last one, and you dedicate 5 minutes of time. So just as a reminder for those teaching at Winter, please be sure to build in a couple minutes at the end for that, in mind that it is fresh at that time, right? They're going through it will be better feedback. And then you also get people that, sometimes you only remember the thing that stood out negatively. So maybe the feedback that we do get can be a little harsher, because those filling out the survey a week later, after they've, they're only remembering some of the negative things and not all of the positives as well. Yeah. Well, with that said, Sherry, we will turn it over to you.
Oh my gosh, what is there left to say? Seriously. I think between Jacob, Jeremy, Mike, and Cece, we have covered it all. I guess, Cece, you talked a couple of things that I was like, no, yeah, I was going to say share on that one. So anyway, I think one thing like Jeremy, I packed my slides. I like it to be a tool for them to take back with. In my evaluations, that's something I have heard, that she's hurrying on those last slides. So I'm going to stress in the beginning a little bit more that it put more in than we need. And also I'm now putting extra slides after the last slide of the presentation, so they don't see that we didn't get to 4 or 5 slides and they're not dinging me on that piece. So I think that might help. But I like having them because, like we said throughout the discussion so far, you may have a class that's very engaged, lots of questions, lots of talking, and sometimes that class is quieter and you get through things faster. So I agree, interactive is key. I do core classes, and I definitely have 2 or 3 projects they work on and they'll mix up who they're with. I have them actually spread out in the room, spread out in the building, and give them not just 5 minutes for that quick conversation, but enough time to truly work on something together and have an outcome. I have found they really thrive on that in that small group work and being able to talk. And I mean, look at the expertise we have in that room already. And so really tapping into it. I'm just there to facilitate their knowledge in some ways. I try to, bring some new concepts out to them, but it's really them discussing what we're talking about. So I really do try to keep it very interactive. I do email ahead of time. In my membership class, I have them bring certain tools with them because they're not membership staff a lot of the time. They are governmental affairs, they're CEOs. And so I ask them to bring like a drop list or a prospect list so we can really show how we analyze these things. So I email in advance normally, and that really opens a door for them to have questions or anything like that as well. So the group activities is something I just feel is really important, that interactive piece. And the chamber size, I think, Mike, you talked a lot about that too, is just knowing who's there, because if I'm using a scenario about a chamber, I need to make sure it's connecting to the association. Even if there's only one association person in the class, I have to make sure that examples, concepts are relatable. And the two classes I teach are really tricky because how you recruit and retain a member from a national association down to a local chamber is very different. Same thing with volunteer development. They're looking at a national board coming from all over the country versus small businesses in your local community. So, Mike, you have a question, I think, or comment?
Comment. Yeah, I think this is really important. Sure, you brought up a big one. You know how you don't want to get anybody upset. And I'm finance. It's so easy to say what size budget. And someone says, I got a $65 million budget, and someone else has got a $200,000 budget. So what I tend to do, this is worth $1 million for me, is I'll go by staff size. And I'll say, smaller staff size, under 10, over 20, you can tell real quick. Because there's things that's going on if they got 25 or 100 staff that's, someone's got 2 staff.
Yes.
So my non-political way is that I do it by staff size. I try to stay away from budget size.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly what I do, Mike.
And
that's more important to me is the staff size. How many hats are each of those people in the room wearing? If their association or their chamber, if their membership, they are the finance people. They wear so many hats. It's a whole different conversation. And I think Cece, you mentioned the time of day. I definitely look at. I always end up with a class after graduation, the next morning, and so it's knowing that if it's their first class, the first day, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, ready to go, and then it's those who have they had a full day already? Have they had a full week? And I'm engaging with them differently. They keep their energy high, but I need to make sure I'm helping keep that energy high as we go through a day, as we go through the week. So very important to look at that. I sometimes, if I can get there on Sunday in time, I will go to homeroom for the 1-1 class I'm going to teach, just to hear who they all are and just to help them feel a little more connected when I see them in class that first day or second day. And that's it helps me as well as them. So I think really what's been said is all stuff that I would have been bringing up as well. Trying to see what else I've got on my notes here that I would have talked about. But I think it's that loud student, same thing like the others have shared, acknowledge and then pull others into that conversation with them so they don't get to monopolize. Bring in the other expertise to share on that as well. And then asking them to table it till after class where you can talk further on it. The quiet class, I've not run across that yet, a quiet person or two maybe, but I involved from the start. I almost every slide I'm using, I'm asking a question back. I want to hear their thoughts on what I've just shared. So I make it so it's open conversation. And that's kind of what I say. I'm not really teaching you a class. I'm facilitating an open discussion for us today on this topic. And I really engage their conversation through the whole class. Mine's easy to do that with, though. It's not the same as numbers and all that kind of stuff. So, but Mike, I know you do that. I see a lot of people from your classes. So I think that's, I think the main thing we talked about, movement as a presenter. I don't know if we've really talked a lot about that, but I definitely try to stay very approachable, not stand behind a podium. Definitely engage, move around the classroom, up and down the aisles, things like that. So I think that's the main thing I would say on that one. So yeah, I'm not going to just sit here and kind of find things. I think we've covered a lot of good stuff today, Cece, and I appreciate the invite to share some thoughts.
Yeah, and I'll echo one thing you said. reminded me of something of, as you look at the rosters and if you break up attendees by what type of role they have, another great thing, just really look at in those rosters. I can't stress enough how useful they are to look at what is the breakdown of your classes, what are their roles at their organization. That's helpful as you go into it, just to know, are a lot of them coming from the same background, especially as you look at electives, because those are typically smaller classes. And again, they've opted in for it versus core, it's pretty set and you're going to get more of a spectrum. You may have more concentrated titles and roles as you get to the elective. So really look at those. And if there's any information that you'd like, that we may collect at registration, we try to include everything on the rosters. So title, organization, location, so where they're geographically located as well, because that could play a role. So just utilize those as much as possible. And yeah. But with that said,
you made me think of something when I look at those rosters as well. When I can see that 50% or more of the class actually does not do the work that I'm teaching on, I have to present a little bit differently because they may not connect with what I'm saying as much. They're like, what, a prospect list? I don't even know if we have one or not. So it's really different. I think keeping it more general and higher vision thinking for those who aren't in the actual role and helping them understand why they're in a core class that, especially if they're from a small organization, they go, I don't do that work, but it's helping them grow for their career and stuff. So really helping connect that.
Yeah. And we do stress at the beginning of Institute and try to throughout of this may not be the role you're in now, but it doesn't mean you may not in the future. And it does help you to understand the other facets of your organization and the work done. Even if right now, today, you're not going to use it, it's helpful whether for a future position or just to help you do your job better, to understand what somebody else is doing in their lane, even if you never have an intention to go to that lane.
Yeah, I've actually had like governmental affairs people go, I had no idea my membership people had to do all this kind of work. So sometimes it's really helpful for them to have empathy and understanding of what their teammates are doing in their jobs. Yeah.
So that's it. We'll open it. Any questions for Sherry? or I know we have other faculty that have joined today. Terrence, I know we have you on. Nika's joined before, have taught before. If you'd like to share anything that you've experienced, any best practices or anything that you'd like to contribute here for those preparing to teach for their first time. Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, I'd like to add one thing. Number one, this has been great information, and I'm in accord with everything I've heard. I would add for people doing it for the first time, trust your professional abilities. So a lot of times in the classrooms, people will throw things out and they're really letting you know what it is they need. And just trust your professional abilities. Answer that question in real time for them. And don't be too stuck to the PowerPoint, because if they're getting what they want, it's a win for everybody.
Echo that. Anything else anybody would like to add? If not, we are very excited to see everyone in a few short weeks. And for those that are not joining us for winter, hopefully very soon, we'll be seeing you. But feel free to reach out to myself or anybody on this call if you have any follow-up questions or anything we can help with. And we'll be coming out with more communication shortly with the confirmation number and final hotel details. So let me know if you need anything else, but we'll be in touch and I'll see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you.
See you soon.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
What's up? Sorry, Mike.
CC, yeah, can you, I was muted. I saw Pam was on earlier.